And, the time is almost 25 to 3. Running a little late here, but I do have my guest on the phone, and he's right here with me. André, you there?
Good afternoon, Linda. Yes, I am.
Well, so you are. That's fantastic. So I have André Alphonso on the phone, and André is going to be talking to us this afternoon about the wonderful technique of mindfulness. Some of you may have heard of it, of course. It's been around for a while, but what is it really about? Now, André, together with his wonderful wife, Kathy, they both co-founders and business owners of a business called zAntideha. And so actually that's a Sanskrit word, and I might get André to actually tell us what it all means. But it sounds to me like they're a community of people who are really into mindfulness. It's that right sort of word, isn't it, for that? So André, tell us a little bit about you and what's it mean? What's zAntideha and what's mindfulness?
Wow, big questions there, Linda. Well, zAntideha is our business name, and it's a Sanskrit word that means peaceful mind and body, and we thought that it kind of represented what we were trying to do as a business over here, right? And our tagline is very much about softening the world. And using mindfulness as a tool to do that. You know, we find ourselves in the pandemic, in an age where there's so much division within communities and people, and, we're looking at false news and misinformation being pushed across, people pointing at each other, that really we are looking at this notion of softening the world, and mindfulness is the vehicle, as I said, to do that. Mm-hmm. So to ask your question, what is mindfulness? And I think a lot of people, when they first hear the word, think of hippies smoking dope, lying out, not working very much, and chanting, funny chants. Yeah. And I think it kind of started off that way. Back in the early 70s.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, mindfulness, I mean, look, as a term, I've really only heard about it maybe sometime in the last decade, but even less than that, maybe because I wasn't tuned into it, but I heard of meditation.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yes. Well, it is quite a recent phenomena over here. In fact, it was brought to mindfulness and meditation, the practice goes back 2,500 years. Back to its origins in Buddhism, and it was brought to the West in the 70s by a guy called John Kabat-Zinn, who found that he could use the same techniques in a non-secular way. You didn't have to, convert from your religion of choice. You didn't have to become a Buddhist, but you could use the practices of mindfulness to reduce stress. And he introduced mindfulness-based stress reduction into hospitals in the U.S. around about the 70s, the mid to late 70s, and had great success with it. But people still were very skeptical about it because it sounded like woo-woo stuff. And then a couple of things happened because people started getting better, and a small movement, if you like, started happening. And like all things in the West, people wanted evidence. What's the evidence? Show me the facts. Don't give me some esoteric, Eastern philosophy that is going to cure my diseases and stuff like that. Mm. And that actually started happening. And you said before, you only started hearing about mindfulness recently. Well, there's a reason for that. Yeah. And the reason for it is because there was this explosion in research. Explosion of research in mindfulness. In fact, if you look at the American Mindfulness Research Association data on the research journal articles actually published from 1980 to 2020, which is the last reading I've got on it, up until, 2004, you could probably add up all of the research journals to be about 30 or 40. Yeah. But something happened, right? Mm. We started getting interested in neuroscience. There was the introduction of functional MRI, which meant we could look inside the brain and look at how blood, moved inside the brain under different circumstances, and start mapping a lot of these techniques. And they did start mapping a lot of these techniques, and they found amazing things were happening. So with the introduction of science and neuroscience, with people just feeling good, the number of articles, so, if I set up to about 2000, 2004, you can probably count them, about less than 40 or 50. Between 2018 and 2020, there were 3,000
Right.
journal articles on mindfulness published, and it's just increasing. And I'd be surprised if 2021 last year, we haven't got the details of that, isn't somewhere around the 1,500 mark or even 2,000 mark, because there is so much interest. Why is this thing make people feel so good and reduce stress and help them with managing pain, improve relationships? There's a whole myriad of things.
Okay.
That kind of makes sense?
Yeah, it does. But Andre, what's fascinating me here is that you, being a successful business person, you've had a fantastic career as an executive coach, a leadership consultant, doing all that. So what was it that brought you to this? Because, I know you've always had this sort of interest in, the mind and people connecting and that sort of thing. But what was it that brought you to mindfulness?
Yeah, there's a story there, Linda. I actually started my first foray into meditation was in the 80s when I was going to university, and decided that transcendental meditation would be a cool thing to do, and I did do it for a while, and it did really help. And I dropped it after getting too busy with life and kids and careers and all sorts of things. But back in 2015. I had a serious heart attack, which basically, in fact, my first heart attack happened when I was 42 years old, which is a long time ago now. Something like 20, I'm 64, so that's 22 years ago. And I thought I had a bypass. I thought everything was fine, and the cardiologist said, "Go, you're going to be okay." And then in 2015, about 15 years later, boom. Heart disease came knocking again, and I was shocked and surprised because I'd actually done things pretty well in terms of my health. And they said to me, "Look, Andre, given the condition of your arteries, you're going to be in trouble for the rest of your life. You're going to just have to take lots of drugs and try and exist." And I kind of looked at myself and thought, you know what, there's got to be another angle over here. So I found these people. Cardiologists actually in the US that looked at a way of actually reversing heart disease. Now that was music to my ears because all of my cardiologists had said to me, you cannot reverse heart disease, you can only manage it. Sure. So part of the process of reversing my heart disease, and there were a number of things which I had to do, but a big part of it was this issue of managing stress. I was in a very stressful job. Stress was, as we all know now, stress is insidious. It's a killer. So I was very clearly I had to do something about my stress, and the vehicle to do that was mindfulness. So I started practicing mindfulness now 7 years ago, and doing it on a regular basis and researching it and going into it and looking at it, and it just made a huge difference in my life in terms of the amount of stress I had to do to deal with. Just kind of it's not that you can get rid of stress in your life. It's how you manage it. You're always going to have stress in your life. No matter what age you are, no matter what's happening, stress is going to come to you. And how you manage it is kind of really what I did. And mindfulness has really helped me do that. But along the way, that's how I started into mindfulness, was trying to figure out how to figure out my heart disease.
Well,
and let me tell you, I'm doing really well. But as far as all of that goes, my cardiologist said that if I didn't know what was wrong with you, I'd say you're absolutely fine.
So but obviously, sorry to interrupt, Andre, but clearly this is one of the elements or one of the pillars of your health. I suppose revamp after the heart disease. So really eliminating stress, and of course there's good stress and bad stress, I suppose. But stress is stress, isn't it? And it has a physical effect on the body.
Yeah. Yes, there is good stress and bad stress, and that's probably another conversation.
Okay.
I was just going to say, along the way, in terms of this mindfulness, the thing I really found that was incredibly valuable was this issue of connecting with myself authentically. I never saw that. I never expected it. It wasn't my intent. But as I look back now in terms of my journey, in terms of mindfulness and what I've done with it, and the business that we've now set up, that we're trying to help other people with, the real value, Linda, is just connecting with who you are. It's taking a step back and looking at how you show up in this world and how you choose to show up in this world with other people and with yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been a real surprise to me.
Well, okay. So do we need to explore a little bit then of what the practice of mindfulness looks like, feels like?
Yeah, there's probably two different ways that we can use mindfulness. There's the formal practice that people use, and there's also what we call the informal practice. Now, the formal practice is typically sitting by yourself in a place and focusing on things like your breath. And it sounds really simple about focusing on your breath, but we do it in a particular way in mindfulness. And, it's all about paying attention to the present moment without judgment. That's kind of our definition. And we use our breath as a vehicle to help us do that. Our breath is with us from the time we're born until the time we die. So it's a fantastic, fantastic vehicle that helps us. We're also finding out now with scientific evidence that, breath is how you breathe in and how you breathe out in a particular way. That we do it in mindfulness has again, many scientific things. So that's the formal practice where you sit down and you close your eyes, and you might do it for a couple of minutes or 5 minutes, or, some people do it for hours, really, which is just paying attention to what's going on. Your mind is running amok. And what we do with mindfulness is, using our breath, we bring our attention back to our breath. Our minds are geared towards, going from thought to thought to thought to thought. Every time you acknowledge that your mind has run away and you bring it back to your breath, is the equivalent of doing a bicep curl in a gym, right? It's that the exercise of mindfulness is coming back and recognizing that your mind has run away. Yeah. And it's quite fascinating because as you start observing your mind running away, it's like, so that's the formal practice, but there's a number of informal practices that we also show people what to do. Such as, walking. How do you take a mindful walk? How do you eat mindfully? How do you have a mindful conversation with somebody else? There's a number of informal ways that you can use mindfulness, whether you're washing the dishes or cutting onions. You can do it in a mindful way. And it's basically just being present in the moment. And that's the beauty of what we're trying to do. And, you live in a beautiful part of Australia down in the Victorian Alps. There's so much to do as you go for a walk, to sit down and be present, not thinking about where you're going, but just being in that moment, whether you're looking at a stream that's running, the sound of birds, the rustle of wind through the trees. They're amazing ways to informally practice mindfulness as you just go about your day.
Well, you know what? I think you've put me in a mindful moment. I've just remembered, oh my goodness, I'm doing an interview here. But actually, I think I was almost meditating. I was imagining the mountains. I was imagining the birds. I was listening to your voice. And I think I sort of reached a higher state of mindfulness just going through that, André. But look, you've packed a lot into that, and we've only got a short time today. But what I'm hearing is that a few things you said, so it's focus. No, it's not focusing. It's bringing attention to the breath, and it's bringing attention to just being in that present moment. It is without judgment, you say, and that means to me when I hear you say that. So the thought that might fly into my head, don't judge it, just let it go. Come back to my breath. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what you're saying. But without judgment, we're so geared up towards judgment. Practicing that in itself takes a little bit of exercise. And it's all about being curious about what's unfolding in the experience at that time. As you sit down and take a breath in, is being curious about the experience that you're having in that moment. And that is what reveals itself to you, and that's also what calms you down. So, yes, that without judgment is a very key thing. So paying attention to the present moment without judgment.
Can it help me release anxious thoughts and those negative voices in my head?
It might, but it's also to acknowledge that they exist. Right? We're not saying we push those away. It's to acknowledge that they exist. But mindfulness teaches you to detach a little bit from that, where you can come back and be an observer of the thoughts that are going out. Your thoughts are not you, Linda. You're just having thoughts right now. Right? And I think that's something that people take away from mindfulness. Is your emotions are not you. You're just having an emotional experience right now.
That sounds very, very much like a Buddhist way of thought. The detachment. It really does.
Yeah. I tell you, when I practice it in moments when I'm feeling really stirred up or stressed about something or anxious about something, that ability to sit down and observe myself, almost outside of myself, is something that calms me in an instant. Again, I use my breath as the vehicle to do that, but I can actually stand aside and observe what's going on in me.
Yeah.
With curiosity.
So, how will mindfulness change me then? How will it change a person? It sounds like a good state to be in. How does it set me up for the challenges that might overwhelm me? Or the day-to-day life that people experience with families, with children, with work. How is it helping them?
Well, we get caught up. We actually get so caught up in what's happening in the moment, or worrying about the future. Not so much in the moment. We're often caught up with worrying about the future. It could be the future could be 5 minutes away, by the way. It's trying to get dinner ready for the kids or for your spouse. It could be trying to get to a particular place at a particular time. It's probably doing some task that has to be done, or looking back at something that you should have done, last week, or regret about something that you said. So we go through this process of looking at the future and looking at the past, and it tends to engulf us. Right? That's a lot of where the stress comes from. It's the anticipation of a future experience. Anxiety is actually defined as that, is that anticipation of a future experience that hasn't happened yet to you. When you learn to be in the moment and you learn to be present, the relationship you have with your kids or your spouse or your parents or your friends, to actually be present with them is a superpower. It's an amazing gift, and it's something that we can all learn how to do. It'll certainly calm you down if you've got a busy life and there's many things going through. It just helps you get perspective about where you are and what to do. Now, it's not a cure. It's not perfect. I still get challenged and I get stressed. But I do have a tool now that I can reach out to and say, okay, I'm just going to spend a bit more time this morning to practice my mindfulness.
I totally get that. We put work into, providing good nutrition to our body. We put work into being active and trying to maintain our health through exercise, eating, and, our mental and emotional states can certainly benefit from good tools in our toolbox too. I can imagine that it helps you to lead a better life of well-being and, the ability, like you say, to self-regulate, when you're experiencing those challenges and difficulties in your life.
Yeah. And I think you're a better person to be around, actually.
Now, is this what you've been told?
I think so, yeah, definitely. I think I'm much more present with friends. I'm much more present with my kids.
Yeah.
I'm much more present with people who matter, whether it's clients I'm working with. And I do it very intentionally now. I can actually, it's not, whereas before it was hit or miss depending on what happened. But now I can actually get myself into a particular zone, if you like, a particular state. So I can intentionally try and be as present and more present than I've ever been able to be in the past.
That's good. So clearly practice is important. Like you said, it's a muscle that we have to regularly use.
Yes, if you don't use it, you lose it. So it is something that needs to be practiced every day. It's not a one and done type of thing. Yeah,
but you're not saying it takes hours to practice. You can just take a moment every little while. I mean, one of the things we're taught, through like work health safety is if you're working at a desk, you'll get up every 50 minutes or so, have a little stretch, flex your toes, walk around, go get a cuppa or something. And, that's about getting some movement back in the body so that the spine gets some rest from sitting, posture. So mindfulness, to me, sounds like it gives a bit of therapy to the mind as well.
Absolutely, and it is as simple as you say, Linda. 3 mindful breaths. If you're running late or something's happening, just 3 mindful breaths takes less than a minute.
Sure.
And it just has an instant impact. And, if your listeners want to try this out, not if you're driving, of course, but if you just want to just sit upright, close your eyes if you can, not if you're driving, and just take a breath in slowly. And, count to even 4 or 5 as you breathe in. And exhale slower. Count to 7 to exhale, so the exhale is a bit slower. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out. 3 times. And you'll find it will give you an instant hit of relaxation. So that's just 3 mindful breaths. And, we can practice that. We practice that for hours and go through all sorts of different things. But 3 mindful breaths is beautiful. A beautiful thing to do. I do it all the time.
That's great. You've just given us a lesson. Thank you. A lovely little takeaway from our chat today. And certainly food for thought for our folks up here in the Alpine Shire who are listening to us today and may not have considered mindfulness before as a tool that they can use to help them in their daily lives. And, just to reach that more calm state. Be in the moment, really listen to the person in front of you and look at them. And, listen to yourself too. André, it's been fabulous chatting with you. We're coming up to the news, and I'm mindful of that.
Hey, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me the time to ask me to be part of it.
Yeah. And I'm thinking ahead, of course, because there's another program I do with a co-presenter here, which is all about building resilience. And to me, it seems like it's just one of those extra things we can pop in that resilience toolbox. So we might be in touch with you again.
Fantastic. Resilience happens to be one of the benefits of practicing mindfulness. So absolutely, love to talk to you about that.
Okay. Well, I'll let you go, and let's hope that everybody's taken a little bit away from that chat and will practice those few breaths just to bring us back to the moment. Thank you, André. Catch you again soon. Bye.
All the best. Have a great afternoon.
And you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.